Just so surprised by, not surprised by, but just irritated by what he just said now to justify what he said previously. The idea that, you know, that he sees the truth here in his comments and knows that there was nothing racist involved.
And when people are making racist comments, the first thing they want to push back with is simply say, you can't play the race card. But it's our job to call it out. I mean, I'm not surprised, but and I'm not disappointed anymore. Nothing about this is new. I mean, this is as an American as American can be. But I'm troubled because this is coming from the highest part of the gland. I mean, this is coming from the United States Senate, the United States Congress. Just last week, we heard from Representative Grothman as well saying that Black Lives Matter didn't believe in the old traditional family. And now you have Ron Johnson saying the same thing. For me, I go back to Stokely Carmichael, Anderson, and Stokely once said that if you want to lynch me, that's your problem. But if you have the power to lynch me, then that's my problem. Racism in this country is a power construct. And people like Ron Johnson have the power and the ability to implement racist policies, even when they're ignorant to the fact that what they're doing is racist. This is not about somebody calling you nigger. I get called that enough in my Twitter comments. I get called that in my messages when I leave CNN every single day. It's not about that. It's about something more than that. It's about the systemic oppression. It's about the systemic racism and people like Ron Johnson who play a role in it and are so ignorant to the role they play, that they sit there and simply turn their back and say, don't play the race card. We're not playing the race card, Senator. We're trying to educate you on the fact that either there's one of two things. Either you're using racism as political currency, which is cowardice, or you simply are ignorant and do not know that the language that you're using is racist and hurtful. It's one of those two options.
And then him using the term, the race card as if it's some sort of game here.
Yeah, and for me, if I had the opportunity to sit down with Senator Johnson, I would go back and say, Senator Johnson, what this is an ignorance of the history and how far we've come. I would sit down and tell him that the reason that we got the 64 and 65 Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act is because of the Edmund Pettus Bridge and people who were brutally beaten on national TV for the first time in this country's history. White folk throughout this country were able to see the dogs, the water hoses, the batons, etc. This is about the assassinations, the Medgar Evers, the Emmett Tills. All of those things led to the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act. I would say, Senator Johnson, the way we got the Fair Housing Act of 1968 was because Dr. King got assassinated. I would say, hell, the reason that the Confederate flag came down in South Carolina is because 9 people, including my friend Clemente Pinckney, were murdered in a church. I would say, Senator Johnson, the only reason we're on the cusp and having these discussions about criminal justice reform is because George Floyd had a knee in his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. What I'm trying to tell you is that there is a great deal of pain and black blood that's flown through the streets of this country so that we could have a semblance of political change. And so I think that he needs to understand the history of this country. So when you make comments like, it's okay for these white boys to come in here with their Confederate flags and anti-Semitic rhetoric and beat police officers and murder a cop, but if there is somebody black standing up for what they believe to be right and just, saying that we need to stop being killed in the street, you want the National Guard called on them. See, that's the problem. And it's not people who use ignorant rhetoric. It's people in power who implement racist policies. That's why I have a problem with Grothman and Ron Johnson.
He's also rewriting history. I mean, he looks at the crowd who attacked the Capitol. He's not scared of them, he alleges, because he knows that they are good people who love this country and love law enforcement. I mean, there are hundreds of people who have been arrested, and numerous police officers who have been injured. One police officer lost their life. 2 others have died by suicide. I mean, it's a complete rewrite of what happened.
It's a rewrite of what happened, but it's American history. Like, just think about Ron Johnson being more sympathetic to cop killers and anti-Semitism and people carrying Confederate flags than black folk protesting. But it's not just about Ron Johnson. That's what I'm trying to tell folks. When we talk about systemic oppression, imagine the Ron Johnson who works at Wells Fargo, who is your loan officer.
Yeah.
who looks at you as less valuable than a white guy who comes in there. Or imagine Ron Johnson as your professor or teacher who looks at you as less intelligent. Imagine Ron Johnson as your police officer that pulls you over on the side of the road who thinks that you are more of a danger than a white boy. See, that is what we're talking about when we talk about this systemic injustice. But Ron Johnson creates the laws. And so, yeah, we got to call it out. We got to push back. And I wish that he would, instead of doubling down, which is what Trump got us, I wish he would simply try to educate himself on the ignorance in the statements that he makes. I know he's retiring, but there is still time to do better. And maybe that's my youthful naivete. I still believe that Ron Johnson can be a better man than he displayed last Friday.
Corey Sellers, appreciate it. Thank you.